Welcome to Beat Diabetes, where we discuss ways and means to thoroughly whip that monster that's been attacking your health and your life. On today's program, we'll look at OMAD, 1 meal a day, and discuss why even OMAD may not be enough to thoroughly beat diabetes. And we'll also answer the question, what does Franklin Roosevelt's election to a fourth term as President of the U.S. have to do with diabetes? Coming up. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description. Okay, here's another comment. One myth I feel needs to be dispelled, this individual says, is quantity doesn't matter. He's saying that's a myth and I need to dispel it. He says if you take in excessive carbohydrates, fats, or proteins, you're going to gain weight. I have a coworker who went straight paleo and did great for about 3 months. Did great for 3 weeks. Sound familiar? But he hit his plateau after a month. Well, that's not very long. Yeah, you've hit your plateau of losing weight after just 4 weeks or so. Not so good. He says, well, for breakfast, he was eating bacon and eggs and black coffee. No problem, right? But he was eating a pound of bacon and 6 eggs cooked in bacon grease. Lunch was 2 huge hamburger patties with 4 slices of American cheese. Supper was bacon and some form of steak cooked in the bacon grease once again. The steak would be 12 ounces or bigger. His excuse was calories don't matter. And then he hit his plateau after going low carb for 3 weeks, and he couldn't lose any more weight. And he's scratching his head saying, well, I don't know what's going on. Calories don't matter, and I'm very low carb. I'm just eating meat and eggs and bacon grease. Well, calories do matter, my friend, some. Granted, there are some difference between carb calories and fat calories. But to say they don't matter at all, and because I am low carb or because I'm keto, I just simply don't have to worry and I can eat as much as my little heart desires or my big heart desires, is just not right. This person speaks now of himself. He says, the only time I used to check my glucose was in the morning. Using that glucose meter I have, I'm learning what foods and amounts of food will increase my glucose readings. I can have a patty of sausage and 2 eggs, and an hour later my glucose has barely budged. 2 patties, however, and 3 eggs, and boom, up goes my glucose readings. Well, that might surprise some, because some would say as long as you're just eating meat, which is essentially no carbs, you should be able to eat as many patties and as much meat and as many eggs, which are essentially no carbs again, as you want. But he says if I eat 1 patty and a couple of eggs, fine, no spike. But if I eat 2 patties and 3 eggs, it goes up. I watched some of the internet doctors touting paleo, how little emphasis is put on controlling portion size and how calories do matter. Well, yeah, they do. And there's just no getting around it, folks. There are 2 little nasty words that I know we hate to hear. One is temperance, which means self-control, and the other is moderation. Now, I know some people say, well, moderation can kill you, and it can if you're fighting for your life. If I'm in a fight for my life with some guy that's twice as big as me and 3 times tougher, if I have any weapon at all, I will use it, and I will not be moderate with that guy. I will be desperate. I will be radical. I will break the rules of fighting to win my battle and to save my life. So in that sense, don't be moderate. But in terms of your normal lifestyle, you got to be moderate and you have to be temperate. Temperate means you control yourself. You discipline yourself. The Apostle Paul talked about, I discipline my body and bring it under subjection. And that's hard, I know. But it's a little easier when you know you're fighting for your life. So on a normal day, when you're not in a fight for your life, let's say you've got your glucose down and you're in the club, you're in the fives club and everything's going smooth and the sun is shining on your world and all is well, then my friend, don't stuff yourself. Don't just eat everything you want to eat as much as you want to eat and spout the mantra, calories don't matter, portion size doesn't matter, portion size doesn't matter, and just say it all and over and try to convince yourself because it's just not true. It can matter. So we've got to basically get back to eating the way people always ate before. Had you lived a couple of 100 years ago, you wouldn't have found many obese people. People were active in those days. People did not have a lot of extra food. They didn't even have refrigerators. And they just went out and hunted or bought a few things at the shop to last them a couple of days. They ate sparingly. They were mostly slim. And diabetes was almost non-existent. I mean, you could look far and wide for diabetics. Yeah, there were some, of course, but not many. And the ones that there were probably more type 1s than there were type 2s. There were no candy bars in those days. There were no sodas. There was no fruit juice. And what fruit you could get, you would get only in season. And usually you wouldn't even stuff yourself with that. You'd have an apple or an orange, maybe for a day, and you'd eat that for a month or so, and then they'd go out of season, and the fruit would rot, or you'd eat it, and that would be the end of it. Bye-bye, Mr. Apple. Bye-bye, Mr. Orange, until next season. So people just didn't eat like they do today. There was no macaroni and cheese. And, there so many things we take for granted today. We just think that's natural eating. People say, well, if I get my glucose down low enough, can I go back to my normal way of eating? Your normal way of eating, my friend, chances are is not at all a natural way of eating. It's normal for 21st century people, but it's not normal for the way people have lived for thousands and thousands of years. All right, another comment. I shared about a man who went 2 meals a day. He lost weight. Then he found out his A1C was 14. Now, his 2 meals a day initially were just whatever he wanted to eat. He didn't restrain his carbs at all. He just said, I'll eat 2 meals. And so he did, and he lost weight. But his A1C was terrible. It was 14. So this guy says, after hearing me talk about this other guy, he says, so losing weight is not enough. Let me repeat that. Losing weight is not enough for some of us. He says, I thought I could eat 1 meal a day and whatever I wanted. I checked my blood sugars. It was spiking over 250, even fasting 24 hours each day. He was OMAD. But his version of OMAD was, for 24 hours or so, you don't eat anything, and then you really feast. And you eat everything you want, as much as you want, as many carbs as you want, as much sugar as you want, because you've been a good boy for the last 24 hours. So now it's time to reward yourself and indulge, candy and cake and pie and dinner rolls and mashed potatoes and gravy and steaks and, just everything. Standard diet. This is my feast time. I'm rewarding myself. I've gone 24 hours and been a good boy and ate nothing, so now I'm going to reward myself. So that's how this guy did it, except, he was OMAD. He was 1 meal a day, but boy, he really made up for it on that 1 meal. He says, I found out I was spiking over 250. We must cut the carbs. I've learned that myself. I went back to doing my 2 meals, but this time I went low carb for my 1 meal a day. So from eating whatever he liked, 1 meal a day, he went to low carb 1 meal a day. He said, it's very easy to do. I'm getting in 18 hours of fasting each day. He went back to 2 meals, 2 meals now. And fasting 18 hours, and he's done low carb, and everything's going so much better for him. So he says, I sure hope someday people eating a low-carb diet will become the norm, and the high-carb diet folks will be the crazy ones. Well, there are some people that 1 meal a day can pretty much solve things temporarily because usually they're young. So many things can work for you when you're young. That's why, there's vegans and there's vegetarians and there's people who eat high-starch diets. Chances are, if they're telling you, I got tremendous results and my blood sugar hardly spikes, and I'm eating all kinds of rice and potatoes and I eat 10 bananas at a time, they're either lying or they're probably young and fit. If you're young and fit, you can get away with so much. And as you get older, you just cannot. So if you're young, you might get by with OMAD and just eat whatever you like, or maybe even 2 meals a day and get by with it. But the older you get, the more you'll realize that even when you're limiting your window of eating to 6 hours or 4 hours or just one meal over the course of maybe 45 minutes, still that one meal is important, and you'd better stay relatively low carb and just not use it as an excuse for gluttony. OMAD with gluttony is not the recipe for victory over diabetes. If you want to do OMAD with self-control, that's fine. Okay, here's a person who says that he lost his dad with both legs amputated, severe dementia among many other diseases, and he passed away at 59, and 59 is young. It's been a few years since I was 59, so I can tell you 59 is too young to die. He had dementia, which 59 is young to even have dementia. Most people don't start getting into that until their 70s, if they get it at all. And he lost both legs. And he had diabetes. Shortened life, dementia, leg amputations, other problems, which he doesn't even mention. I guess the moral of that story is diabetes is serious, folks. Don't take it lightly. I know that sometimes Benedict and I will joke around, and we made a couple of comedy skits about it. We try to keep it as light as we can. But don't be under the wrong impression that we're making light of diabetes. It's nothing to make light of. It is a bad, bad thing. And when your doctor says you have diabetes, you have a right to be scared, but hopefully it's a fear that will lead you and motivate you to do the right thing, and then you find out it can be beaten after all. The most foolish people of all are the ones who simply ignore it and just, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I'm just going to pretend like it's not there. My doctor's been warning me that my glucose is too high, my A1C is too high, but I'm just going to pretend like it's not. Kind of reminds me of the lady I heard about that lived in the days of Franklin Roosevelt back in the 1930s and 40s. Roosevelt was elected president, I believe, 4 times. And that was before we had a law against limiting presidents to 2 terms. But back in those days, he was elected to, I think, 4. And so on his final term where he was elected, this one particular lady, she just hated Roosevelt. She just hated him. And by this time, she was getting old. She opposed him in every election. She just didn't like him. But by his 4th term, she did everything she could. She was getting older. She wasn't healthy. She wasn't strong. She had a heart condition, but she gave money. She was a wealthy lady, and so she gave money to support the guy that was opposing Roosevelt, and just worked as hard as she was capable of working, and talked about it nonstop to her friends and even her maid about how she desperately hoped Mr. Roosevelt would not make it to a 4th term. So finally the election came, and Roosevelt was elected once again. But the maid heard it before her lady of the house heard about it. So her maid was fearful to tell the lady about Roosevelt being elected. She had heard it on the radio, and now she was afraid. And so she came to the room, and the lady said, "Well, Anna," I think her name was Anna, "have you heard the election results? What has happened?" And the lady paused for a moment, afraid to say anything, and finally she worked up the courage and said, "Well, ma'am, I'm sorry to tell you, but President Roosevelt has been elected for another term." And she was wondering, am I going to have to pick her dead body up off the bed and, call the medics? The lady sat up ever so straight and just said, "Never mind, Anna, never mind. We'll just act as though it never happened." And she refused to ever speak his name again or acknowledge that Roosevelt was the president. And some people are that way about diabetes. It's like, never mind, never mind. I'll just act like it never happened. I'll continue to eat my mashed potatoes and gravy. I will continue to eat my big monster pretzels. I'll continue to have my big dinner rolls. I'll continue to have my macaroni and cheese. I'll continue to drink my fruit juice. I'll continue to drink my sodas. I'll continue to have my German chocolate cake and my chocolate silk pie and all the things that I've loved all my life. Never mind, never mind. I'll just act like it never happened. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you found this video a blessing, give it a thumbs up so YouTube will recognize its value and cause it to show up to other diabetics as one of its recommended videos. And I hope you'll subscribe to this channel and click on that bell icon so you'll be notified every time we post a new video. God bless. See you again soon.